This earnings season, we've seen one phrase make a remarkably frequent appearance: AI. S&P 500 companies have mentioned AI more than 1,000 times on earnings calls this year, up 64% from a year ago. Between Google, Meta, and Microsoft, it was mentioned 161 times. Now, for many companies, talking about AI has inspired massive investor confidence. Palantir, for example, said it was, quote, running hard at AI technology, and its shares rallied 20% after the call. For others, not so much. Last week, we discussed Chegg, which, despite making plans to implement AI in its products, said that tools such as ChatGPT are harming its business, and the stock got nearly cut in half. So, Scott, clearly these companies believe they need to make assurances about their implementation of AI. My question to you is, why do you think investors are so sensitive to that word?
We got to play the clip. Have you seen the TikTok of Sundar Pichai from Google?
Amazing.
We've got it. Let's play that right now.
AI, generative AI, generative AI, generative AI, AI is AI, 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 AI. It uses AI to bring AI, 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 AI.
Okay, so we live in an era where typically stock prices or equity values are driven by two things: numbers and narrative. And that is, okay, you're in the automobile industry, which typically trades at 6 to 8 times EBITDA. And then the narrative, oh, we're going to EV, or Mary Barr does a great job of outlining this narrative around emerging markets. So she gets to trade at 7.5 to 8. And the CEO of Fiat Chrysler, or whatever they call the thing now, doesn't have a very cogent vision, isn't as articulate or compelling, so it trades at 5 times. But it traded within a band. The narrative kind of took you up a little bit, but not a lot. Things have totally flipped because now the majority of companies that go public aren't very profitable. So it's all about the narrative because the metrics are sort of up for grabs. Which number do you look at? Do you look at margins? There is no profitability. Do you look at growth, subscriber? I mean, it gets harder to value these companies, so it becomes about the narrative. And as a result, the number of PR and comms people who send me 5 emails a day saying, hey, would you love to have so-and-so on your podcast? I'm like, no, this person sounds like they brighten up a room by leaving it. But there are so many people flacking their leadership to try and shape a narrative, right? Or my favorite is when some big tech CEO comes to town and their comms calls me and says, would you like to come sit down with the CEO of Uber over dinner and hear his vision for technology? I'm like, oh my God, put a fucking gun in my mouth. Anyways, the ratio of bullshit spin to actual analysis or investigative reporting on these companies has gone the wrong way 12x. So the narrative is just huge. And so what you find is these individuals, these very smart PR and comms people, sit down with the CEO and do a lot of work before the earnings call because they know guys like us are going to go through the earnings call and actually literally track how many times they said the word.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get insight into their strategy. It's almost like an X-ray on the corpus of the company, parsing the words that they say and they repeat over and over. And nothing is accidental. This is very intentional. And what they're trying to do here is the ultimate jujitsu move and not be Chegg and say we're a victim. We're the predator. We're the apex predator. We're leveraging AI to massively increase our business. This is the closest thing I can remember is all of these companies started running ads saying, we're not Target, we're Target.com. We're not Williams-Sonoma, we're Williams-Sonoma, wait for it.com. I haven't seen this since kind of the mid and late 90s where everybody thought, let's accessorize our analog outfit with digital earrings called AI.
So you mentioned that they're very surgical about the amount of times that they mention that word, especially that word right now. Some companies barely mentioned it. So Apple on its earnings call only said it twice. Amazon only said it 7 times. If you were the CEO of a public company, specifically a public tech company right now, what would your communication strategy be? Would you just be hammering away at we are the next AI behemoth? Or would you go the Tim Cook route and just barely even acknowledge it?
So Apple is, Tim Cook's is Jesus Christ. This guy has added more shareholder value, literally, than any individual in history. When you took over the company, when Steve Jobs passed away, I think the company had a $300 billion market cap. Now I think it's $2.5 trillion or something. He's added over $2 billion in market cap. No one has ever done that. Now, granted, a lot of people would say it's harder to go from zero to 300 billion than it is from 300 billion to 2.5 trillion. But be that as it may, he has added more shareholder value. He has the luxury of being very sober and being very adult and not using adjectives or embellishment and just talking down the stock, being very kind of the adult in the room, being very measured and sober. And that's how he is on earnings calls. And everyone is used to Tim just showing up and doing amazing work and thinking long term and not getting caught up in trends. 99% of CEOs don't have that luxury. If the stock goes down 30, 40% the next day after an earnings call, there's a 1 in 3 chance they're going to be fired in the next 6 months. And so there's a lot more jazz hands across the rest of the ecosystem. So you can't really compare Bezos or Andy Jassy even or Amazon and Apple. They just have so much investor credibility that they can be a little less flowery with their language, if you will. Everyone else, get out your red dress.
You think substantially more than Google? I mean, Sundar Pichai mentioned it, I think, over 60 times. Is Google less credible?
That's the correct question. And the answer is that for the first time in probably 20 years, Google has been taken off their toes and onto their heels. All of a sudden, literally overnight, with the emergence of OpenAI and ChatGPT, all of a sudden, Google looks mismanaged. It looks poorly managed. And it just seems just sort of this, we always thought, Google's amazing. Great. I think it has probably the greatest concentration of IQ since the Manhattan Project. And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT comes along and you're like, oh my gosh, the best corporate VC investment in history was Microsoft. They leapfrogged Google, who developed much of the original technology. And all of a sudden, Google looks borderline incompetent for not innovating. How has search changed over the last 10 years? I'll tell you how it's changed. It's gotten worse. And that is the top 2 search returns used to be shaded in blue to say, all right, someone's paying for this, full disclosure. Now the whole fucking first page is paid for. And they have slowly but surely reduced that imagery or that shading such that Google, the first 10, 20, 50 returns aren't taking you to the best place for information based on your query, but another place they can monetize. And then ChatGPT shows up. And I think the power of AI and putting in a query into a generative AI is they're saying, okay, when you go into Google, you might get, you're going to get 10,000 results in 0.00055 seconds. What you'll find, though, is it's somewhere between a ratio of 1 to 98 if you really go through. But you got to do some work. You got to go down the page, find based on the source. What ChatGPT is betting, or AI is betting, is that we're going to give you one answer. We're going to give you one return, and it'll be somewhere between 60 and 70% accurate because, as our colleague in the marketing department at Columbia, Sheena Iyengar, says, choice is a tax, and consumers don't want more choice. They want to be more confident in the choice presented, and that is the entire shooting match around generative AI, is it gives you one good, maybe not perfect, but one good answer.
Yeah, I'd argue that it's less than good right now, but I think that's the race to make it a good one. You mentioned this idea of jazz hands. So a few years ago, the jazz hands were blockchain. In 2021, the jazz hands were metaverse. Now it's AI. You clearly believe in AI and its substance and its potential. How much of it is jazz hands and how much of it is real?
Well, what I tell people I spoke in Austin this morning at a conference, and if you look at academic research, it was a slow, enduring, multi-decade build around mobile and GPS. And mobile and GPS is arguably the most transformative technology of the last several decades. In metaverse and in crypto, a massive spike in academic research, and then it went away almost as quickly as it popped up. The curve around academic research or peer-reviewed research published in academic journals around AI looks eerily similar to the research curve around mobile GPS, which leads me to believe that it is a much more enduring technology. In addition, just anecdotally, when I used to go to these conferences and we'd all gather around some microwave or 1980s Moscow modern-looking microwave that would miraculously create a Yoda out of a bunch of goop, and it was the notion that 3D printing was going to change the world. I'm like, this is ridiculous. When I put on a headset, an Oculus, and I thought, other than just outing myself as an incel, this and getting really nauseous. I'm a nauseous incel. I'm an incel. This shit's not going to work. Internet of Things never made any sense to me. The last technology I've been this excited about was voice. And I think this technology, I think if you spend time on ChatGPT or some of these other generative AI, I just think it's just striking. I've been working, my 12-year-old's totally into it. We're going to Istanbul for the Euro Cup finals, and we're planning our whole trip using AI. And you just can't, well, let me ask you, when you play around with AI, don't you just think, Jesus Christ, this is powerful?
100%. Yeah, for the first time, it feels like the hype technology has millions of use cases, and it's getting people to actually think creatively. I think people are probably going to take advantage of that and raise ridiculous sums of money at ridiculous valuations because of the hype. But ultimately, yeah, I completely agree with you that this one's actually going to pull the future forward for the first time. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, look, there was .com got way ahead of itself. The web and e-commerce got ahead of itself. Mobile gaming got way ahead of itself. This will have a hype cycle. I think we're already kind of in peak hype cycle. And there'll be a lot of companies that can't live up to the expectations. But this feels like an enduring technology.